Folks, welcome back. It's been a long time, hasn't it? It's been almost 2 months since I did a video. I need to get back in the game. Today we're going to talk about cults. Okay? There was a video on YouTube that talked about the Mormon Influences on Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. If you don't know who they are, you must live under a rock or something. But look it up, Lori Vallow. Vallow. Anyways, they had a 4-hour-long video, which I didn't watch, and it was part 2 of another video. Do you really need to watch a 4-hour video to find out how wrong they went? No, I can sum it up for you in 5 minutes. All right, I started looking at all these different cults and all these people that are doing all these terrible things because God told them to, and I've got it all figured out. Okay, so stay with me. There's a book by a guy named Carnegie. Dale Carnegie, or Carnegie, however you pronounce it, called How to Win Friends and Influence People. He also wrote another book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And in this book, in the How to Win Friends, he says that most people's needs are met except for one, and that is the feeling of importance. And that's something that religion provides. Okay, if you want to get people to do something, give them a sense of importance. Okay, and that's what cults do too. I was watching a girl on YouTube who used to be a Mormon. Her channel is called XMoLex. Check it out, it's really good if you're interested in the subject matter. She says that when she was going around trying to missionize people to join the Mormon church, they would ask people to read a passage from the Book of Mormon and then pray to see if it's true. And Mormons do this too. It's all about praying and getting visions from God rather than reading and following God's word. Now, the Torah, okay, God appeared to everybody on Mount Sinai and said, do this and don't do that. Some of those things are do not murder, do not steal. It's written so simply that even a child can understand it and follow it. So why can't Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell? Because they're relying on visions and spirit boxes and a whole bunch of other stupid mumbo-jumbo BS instead of saying, what does the Torah say about it? That should be your starting point, your foundation. But Christians, of course, are not encouraged to read the Bible in that fashion. They're supposed to start with Matthew and then go back and read a little bit of stuff here and there in the Old Testament. Not too much. And then they teach them that, oh, you don't have to pay attention to it because that's the old covenant. There's a new covenant now. Okay, and that's where people get led astray. And it's very simple to come back to that. All you got to do is say when the Mormons come to the door, nope, I believe in God. Not Joseph Smith, not Paul, not Jesus, not dead men on a stick, or some guy that marries 14-year-old girls. Which is another subject I want to bring up. A lot of people leave the Mormon church because they find out about this thing called the CES letter, which exposes all the lies of the history of the Mormon church and things like that. Now, if you really believed in God, wouldn't you say, okay, well, those things are terrible, but I'm not going to stop believing something just because a leader does something bad. You know, Moses made mistakes. You don't see the Jews going, oh, let's go off and follow our own hearts because Moses did that, or Saul did this or that, or somebody else did something. So let's forget what God says in the scriptures and follow our own hearts. That's how they get in trouble. So don't do that. Numbers 15:39 is one of the single most important passages in the Bible, I believe. Numbers 15:39, these will serve as tassels for you to look at so that you may remember all the commandments. Not the feelings, not the visions. Okay, the commandments. You shall not murder. Okay? So that you may obey them and not prostitute yourselves by following your own heart and your own eyes. Say it again with me. By not following your own heart and your own eyes. Well, I saw this. It was beautiful. I had a spiritual experience. We all cried and got down on the floor and, oh, it was wonderful and everything. I believe in Jesus and Joseph Smith and the next guy and Lori Vallow and whoever else comes after that. Whatever charismatic clown just happens to walk up to my front door. Okay, God says don't do that. Don't follow your heart. Don't follow your eyes. Follow my commandments. It's very simple. But people gloss over that. They're not encouraged to read that. So what is the definition of a cult? Well, there's plenty of different definitions, and if you're in a cult, your definition of a cult is going to be slightly different than somebody who's not in a cult. But let's just look at a few here. Cult. A system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. That could apply to like Jesus or Paul or Joseph Smith, right? A cult is a group or movement held together by a shared commitment to a charismatic leader or ideology. Same thing. A belief system that has the answers to all life's questions and offers a special solution to be gained only by following the leader's rules. Questioning, doubt, dissent, or discouraged or even punished. Okay, if you're in a cult and you say, well, I want to read this or I want to look at that or get a second opinion, and they say, no, don't do that. No, that's the devil leading you astray. You want to follow what I say. Okay, that means you're in a cult. If you're afraid to get further information. Okay, questioning, doubt. Scientology and Mormonism have outlived their charismatic leaders. L. Ron Hubbard is dead, but the movement still continues. Joseph Smith is dead. The Mormons been around for over 100 years now, 150 years, something like that, since the 1830s. So they say, if the movement dies out after the leader's dead, then it's definitely a cult. But if it keeps going, it's not a cult. So you can use whatever words you want. You can call it a cult or a religion, but if you're not following the Torah, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's still garbage. Okay, if you've got 14 kids chained to the beds in a house in San Diego, and you're like, oh, we're part of the Pentecostal church, we're the true church, you're not following God's commands. You're following your own hearts and your own lies and visions. Okay, if you've got kids buried in the backyard and you got a spirit box to tell if there's a light spirit or a dark spirit, you're part of a cult. You're following Chad Daybell and his feelings and thoughts and visions, not God's commands. Jim Jones, remember the people that drank the Kool-Aid and died? That's a cult. How did that turn out for you? All these people that say the end of the world is near, they've been saying that for thousands of years. The end of the world's always been near. These are the end times. Everybody wants to feel important by being part of the end times. And Lori Vallow thought that she was going to be the leader of the 144,000 from the book of Revelation. Nonsense. Garbage. Filth. Rubbish. Seventh-day Adventists, that came from a tradition from the 1840s. They predicted that the apocalypse, or the end, was going to happen in 1843. Obviously, it didn't happen. The movement continued, and it's an established religion now. Okay, it was a cult, but it still continues, so it's called a religion. But it's all the same thing. It's all a bunch of people that don't follow the Torah. If one factor can determine the difference between a cult and a religion, according to one guy, it would be the amount of time that goes by. Okay? Oh, that's been around for over 100 years. Oh, it must be true. Or 2,000 years, it must be true. So, I don't know what anybody else thinks or feels, but this is just my opinion, and that doesn't mean much. But let's look at what the Gospels say about Jesus himself. Matthew chapter 10, verse 37. What happened to honor your mother and father? Well, we throw that right out the window. Jesus says, anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Well, then I guess I'm not worthy of you, Jesus. You're supposed to honor your mother and father. Luke chapter 14, 26. If anyone comes to me and does not hate. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own mother or father. Wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, then he cannot be part of my cult. And then remember in Matthew chapter 12 where he's speaking to the crowds and somebody comes up, psst, hey, your mother and your brothers are here. And Jesus is like, who are my mother and brothers? Anybody who follows the will of God is my mother and brothers. So he kind of disses his family there. Again, more cult-like behavior. Now, how did Lori Vallow allegedly justify murdering her ex-husband Charles? Because, well, he wasn't really Charles. He was somebody else or a demon or a spirit from a past life or something. Lori thought that she had had plenty of past lives. And see, that's another thing that's unbiblical, is you get this life. This is your chance to try and do good things, to get closer to God. Not like, one life, oh, you screwed up, get another life, screwed up, get another life, until you reach perfection, which is what reincarnationists and Hindus believe. And it's unbiblical, and it leads to problems like what we see with Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. But there's also patterns to all these cultists and the misery that they lead themselves into. Many admit to never reading the Bible. There was one girl that she was part of Crew. I don't know if you know who they are. And she said, she said, my quiet times with God were incredible. I filled journal after journal with insights from the Bible, a book I had hardly touched growing up. That's got to tell you everything right there. How can you believe something? How can you believe something if you've never read it? Doesn't make sense to me. Our campus prayer meetings lasted long into the night, and I remember sensing like God was speaking to me directly into my heart and walking closely beside me every day. Hi, Jesus, thank you for walking with me. So these cults, like the LDS missionaries and the J Witness missionaries, when they come to your door, they don't just walk up to the door and say, hey, I want to talk to you about Jesus. They do a little bit of research first. Hey, do you know who that person is in the new house? Do you know if they're downtrodden? Do you know if they're miserable and depressed and their lives suck and everything? Those are the people that they try to get. They want to target people in vulnerable emotional states that need hope and support. There was another cult that I read about called IHOP, not the pancake place, but I think it's called the International House of Prayer. And the IHOP situation, I can't remember all the details, but I think it was a girl that married a guy and he turned out to be homosexual. She ended up killing herself. Again, everybody ends up dead or miserable when they join these cults because they don't follow what it says in the Torah. Their prayer group experiences were very emotional. Okay, well, of course they are. Nobody's going to join a cult if there's some guy carrying a cardboard sign on the side of the road saying, join my cult, right? It's got to look pretty and beautiful. Just like the picture of Jesus that you painted yourself and hung on the wall. This is how we want our God to look. So if you're not reading the Bible and instead you're reading books by other people about the Bible, you're going to get yourself into trouble. You might have a bunch of friends and a place to stay and food to eat, but you're not doing your soul any justice by following these people. Here's a perfect example of following your heart. A lot of people like to took the Beatles album back in the 60s and said, look, he's not wearing any shoes on the front of the Abbey Road album. Therefore, Paul McCartney is dead. They haven't toured in several years, and we think it's an imposter, Paul McCartney. And if you play the record backwards, it says Paul is dead. And if you look on here and you hold it upside down, there's a phone number to call to get more information about Paul being dead. I mean, the nonsense just doesn't stop. And that's a perfect example of people following their hearts instead of saying, Paul McCartney came out and he's actually alive. Well, we don't want to take Paul McCartney's word for it. He must be possessed by a demon or a friend of the guy that is possessing Charles Vallow or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just pure and utter insane nonsense. Stay away from it. Run from it. All these people, none of it ever ends up good. David Koresh, Deanna Laney stoned her children to death. God said the end was near. Okay? The end is not near. God didn't tell you to kill your kids. You're not the chosen person for the 144,000. And you're not that special. Okay, so the world doesn't evolve around you. If you want to have a relationship with God, read the Torah and have a relationship. Okay, but if you read the Torah and do the opposite and follow a bunch of nonsense by a bunch of nonsensical people, naturally bad things are going to happen to you. Have a nice day.